Greetings, everyone, and thanks for watching. My name is Suzanne Titkemeyer. I used to write a column for a place called Pathos. The name of the column was No Longer Quivering. I did that for 10 years, and what I wrote about was the quiverful, non denominational, evangelical, high demand religious organization world. Lots of stuff to do that was that way. And the quiverful world superstars are basically the Duggars, who I'm about to talk about a little bit today because there's been a lot of misinformation getting out there. The other day, I tried to correct some of this misinformation, and I see that Cafe Mom has gone ahead and run with the fake information like it's real, just like tabloid press has a tendency to do. Okay, let's get into this. If you could do the YouTubey things, like, subscribe, that would be awesome. These are just my opinions. Don't bully anybody I'm about to talk about. Okay, so I can't go live because if you're watching, you'll see that every now and then my electric is doing like this. So on the days where the electric is that way, and I know my internet is goofy, this is what you're going to get. You're not going to get lives, and it's a shame because I enjoy talking to you guys so much. But at the same time, and I've got a cold, so you have to excuse me. I'm going to be lubricating a bunch with a little Diet Coke this afternoon. Okay, so this morning somebody sent me a copy of an article on Cafe Mom that quotes a certain YouTuber that makes up her sources and makes up her information, who's claiming to have a Duggar insider. And they're talking about the Duggars and others in the church beating the kids with plastic tubes, quote unquote, plastic tubes. And I explained this the other day. It's not plastic tubes. It's 1/4 inch plastic plumbing lines. Why do I say this? And how can I speak about this with authority on the Duggars? Very simply, the first Duggar special showed the Duggar family. They had a copy of a book on their bookshelf, and you could see it in several shots in the first couple specials, called To Train Up a Child by Michael Pearl. And Michael Pearl is a guy who runs his own ministry called No Greater Joy. Michael Pearl teaches that you beat the ever-loving daylights out of your children as discipline. The book has a story about the time that he was disciplining a 2-year-old and stopped every 5 miles or so and switched the kid hard to make him behave because the child would not sleep in the middle of the night. So many tales in that book of applying the switch to someone's rear end. And his most recommended implement on his website and his book has been the 1/4 inch plastic plumbing line, not plastic tubes. So, Cafe Mom, you just look stupid for not doing research. So, what has brought all this up? Well, it's because Jinger Duggar Vuolo is getting ready to release her new book about going from the IBLPATI, Bill Gothard religion, to going to John MacArthur and his Grace Community Church and what freedom it is. Now, I've talked about this a couple of times already. Ginger is on a deconversion journey, whether she recognizes it as such or not, and whether it stops right there with John MacArthur, which it may well do. It could be. It could go on. It just really depends upon which way she decides to go with this. Not you, not I, not anybody but her. You don't know. She could end all the way up 180 degrees from where she is right now, but she could stay stuck. It's really on her. And I think it's kind of irresponsible to keep speculating on it that some bloggers and YouTubers like to do. Oh, Ginger this, Ginger that, Duggar's this, Duggar's that. You remember I was just speaking about the Duggars having used the Michael Pearl methods because they talked about it in the first special. It wasn't just the fact that the book was on their bookshelf. And by the way, the same book has been spotted on the bookshelves at several times when children have been disciplined to death. At least 4 that I can think of, the book was found there, and they were following the book when they ended up taking their child's life. So the Duggars, from the very beginning, have talked about blanket training. Blanket training is a technique taken straight out of Michael Pearl's book that involves putting a small baby, on a blanket on the floor and putting a couple of toys just outside the blanket. And when the child crawls to the edge of the blanket and tries to leave the blanket and grab the toys, you pull out that quarter-inch thick plumbing line and you wail the tar out of them. You teach them to be afraid to disobey, per Michael Pearl. Now, I think that is a terrible way to discipline children. I don't care if the Duggars did it. I don't care if the Pope did it. It's still a bad idea. I've always been much more supporter of love and logic and discipline like that has consequences for the child, that takes the angry adult out of the equation and does not physically harm the child. That's just my personal opinion, the way I raised my children. I've never been a fan of spanking anybody unless they wanted it. And we're an adult and it involved bedroom play. That'd be the only way I would ever be fine with spanking anybody. So you have the Duggars. They're promoting blanket training. They have the book on their shelves in the first couple of shows until people remark upon it. And suddenly they stop talking about blanket training and the book disappears from the bookshelf. Even though you know darn good and well that is still going on. There was a gal that wrote a book recently. I believe her book was Lovingly Punished. She talks a number of times about having met the Duggar patriarch and how, yes, they followed the Michael Pearl, wail the crap out of their kids method of discipline. And I believe that's probably true, just from my observations of the years and having lived in that world for 17 years. It is amazing what people will do in the name of God. Now, Michael Pearl, you can look at his website and see that he takes everything way too far with these things. The stories in the book and in their No Greater Joy magazine are positively horrific. And they're easy to access on there. There's also a video on YouTube, I'll put the link in my description, that involves Michael Pearl giving a teaching showing you how to beat your child. And he has like a ragdoll representation of a child, life size. And I don't know about you guys, but watching him use the quote rod of correction on the child is just horrifying, even if it is a doll and not a person. It is too much for me. I have to think that a loving parent would have a problem with that. Well, so we've already established the Duggars follow Michael Pearl in that regards. The ILBP and Michael Pearl and his No Greater Joy, they've linked up before for teachings, and the Pearls have gone down to Big Sandy to the conference and taught there before. So they're all kind of interconnected, like they usually are in a lot of these quiverful kind of fundy town things. People are interconnected. Everybody's promoting their own little ministry thing. So then we have Jinger. She marries Jeremy. They go off to Los Angeles, where Jeremy is at the Master's University, the same place my pastor went to get his master's and then PhD in theology. So I got to hear a lot of this same theology from the pulpit, is what John MacArthur preaches. And the whole Michael Pearl thing, I heard about that from people because I had people there that told me my youngest was poorly behaved and I needed to beat her. The child with the low platelets. And I never paid any mind to it. In fact, the one person that gave me a copy of To Train Up a Child, I threw it in the trash can. I wasn't about to let it get in anybody else's hands. Even back then, even drinking the Kool-Aid, I was horrified with the very thought of ever lifting a hand to my child like that. Just counterintuitive to everything that I know that works. It's not to say I didn't yell occasionally and say some ugly things, because I certainly did when I was part of Quiverful, that I deeply regret and I apologize for. But I knew that. I knew all that theology. I followed the same stuff that the Duggars were following. I had listened to some IBLP teachings, a number of Bill Gothard's teachings, set under John MacArthur. And let me tell you something, as I keep talking about Ginger Duggar and what she's doing now, like I said, it's like going from the old cast iron skillet, jumping into the fancy white ceramic skillet. It's still a skillet. There's still danger there. There's still toxicity. It's just is neatly wrapped in something more socially acceptable than Bill Gothard's. I have a review copy of the book. I don't know why I'm stumbling over my words like I've been drinking. I have a review copy. I started reading it. I don't think there's any much stuff in there that's going to be a big surprise to anyone. It's stuff I've always either thought or heard whispered about the Duggars. It's a fear-based theology. The problem is that Ginger has moved from one fear-based theology to the next fear-based theology, but she is unable to see it at this point. That's what I've said. I hope that her deconversion continues, and that she gets away from the John MacArthur stuff because it's no better. In fact, I was looking a little while ago and I was like, what does John MacArthur say about child discipline? Well, I pulled up his website. Let's take a real quick look. I'm going to put the link to this in my description as well. Where am I? Okay. Oh, John MacArthur wrote an article on his website, Grace to You, called Parenting an Anti-Spanking Culture, referencing a ton of scriptures. He basically talked about spanking and how many people are now against spanking. He doesn't come out and say, grab your kid and beat the crap out of him, but he quotes the very scriptures that talk about that. Things like, he who spares his rod hates his son, but he who loves him disciplines him promptly. Proverbs 13:24. Foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. The rod of correction will drive it from him. Proverbs 22:15. You shall beat him with a rod and deliver his soul from hell. Proverbs 23:14. There's a bunch of other scriptural references. And basically, he goes to try to oppose every single type of parenting that does not involve using the rod of correction. And he has a ton of different scriptures he uses to justify what he's saying. So he's not saying in the inelegant, countrified, redneck way of Michael Pearl. He's not saying, grab that child up and whoop their rear ends. Whoop their rear ends with that plumbing pipe. You hit them where they can't sit down. He's not saying that. He's doing it in a more relatable, more, I don't want to say upscale Christian, but let's just say a different culturally Christian thing. But he's saying exactly the same thing, that if you have a child that you were disciplining, that spanking is part of that process. That's exactly what he's promoting. So this is what I mean when I say that Ginger has gone from the cast iron skillet, the old cast iron skillet, to the new fancy white ceramic skillet. They're both skillets. You're still going to get burned. But this skillet looks clean and different, and it's shiny and new. Because John MacArthur is couching his language in something that is more societally acceptable than what Michael Pearl does. That's what the difference is. Same theology, different wrapping paper. That is it. And the thing that bothers me about the book, and not so much the book, but the people who are covering the book, so many times, somebody pointed this out to me earlier today, so many times there is no cultural competency going on at all in the discussions or any of the claims being made. There's no context given to what's being said. Like I'm trying to explain where this spanking theology came from, Michael Pearl and John MacArthur. It comes from Proverbs and many other things. They're focusing on a few scriptures about discipline to justify the abuse of children. That's what it boils down to. That is the context. So we have a lot of people that take these things out of context, and that's when they come up with hollow plastic. That's not at all. That's not a good description. 1/4 inch plastic plumbing line is, because it's what Michael promoted. You have to understand also the quiverful and evangelical culture that all of this stuff springs from. You have to understand that this is a culture of control. It's all about control. It's not about Jesus. It's certainly not about bringing heaven to earth. It's certainly not about the love of God. It's all about control. It's that umbrella theology thing that Bill Gothard used to do. God, husband, man, wife, children. Big umbrella, medium umbrella, little teeny tiny umbrella. The wife and the children have no authority whatsoever. It's all man, 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 and then God. But mostly it's about men becoming godlike. They say that they are under authority to God, but if anybody dares come up against their authority, anybody, I don't care who it is, they're going to circle the wagons and fight, almost like they are God, or they think that they're God, or they think that their thoughts and words are God every time. Which, this is one of the problems I have with prophecy. There's nothing wrong with prophecy if you keep in mind that if you receive a prophecy about somebody else that is negative, then you're probably mixing some of yourself in there with it. It's probably not coming from God. And in the same way, if somebody tries to give you a horrible negative prophecy, I would just be going, thank you, no. So that's what I mean about understanding the culture and about relativity and how that fits into people's lives and what Jesus actually says about these things. Jesus said, suffer the little children to come unto me. And I think that to me says more than any amount of spare the rod, spoil the child. Oh, so all of this discussions going on and misinformation being thrown about and somebody running around trying to make bank off of misinformation that they're inventing or getting from people who are not insiders or claiming to be those unnamed Duggar insiders who've given the National Enquirer, Weekly World News, they've given them informazione, as we say here, and it's not correct. It's very incorrect. Those of us who've been through this, who lived through this crap, been there, done that, gotten the tattoo, except it's not a tattoo, it's more a t-shirt. Sometimes when these things happen and we see people misunderstand what we've been through, misrepresent our paths and what happened to us, it's very re-traumatizing. It just brings up all the old feelings again, the most horrible parts of it. And it re-victimizes some people. Some people handle that better and worse than others. I don't necessarily handle that great myself. As I found out when I went down to Louisiana and found out things about both of my parents that I had no idea about. And I also had recovered memories that I was like going, oh, I don't want to think about that. That's the problem with living through trauma. That is the big problem. I wish that people don't ever have to go through trauma, because at some point you got to pay the piper. You have to work through this. Either you go, la la la, I'm not looking, and you stay stuck the rest of your life and nothing ever works out for you. You're in the same place all the time. Or you have to work on what has happened to you and work through it. And it's not necessarily the most fun in the world. It's very unfun. I hate it. I got days where I'm praying and God will reveal something from my past, and I'm like, what? I don't want to think about that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to go there. Even though I know that to be reminded of some of this stuff, it's for my own personal good and to get through the stuff and put it behind you. Put it in the rearview mirror. So many things I'd like to have completely in the rearview mirror. I would really like to have to stop explaining quiverful to everybody and their brother. I was thinking that once I published my book, that I would be 100% done with ever having to explain quiverful to another person the rest of my life. I can see now that this is probably going to be an ongoing process for me. Something that when these things pop up and I'm triggered, I'm going to talk about it. So, yeah, I was highly triggered about this person making claims about having all unnamed Duggar insiders, and they were talking about hollow plastic tubes. It's not hollow plastic tubes that is the implement of choice. They're told to use wooden spoons sometimes. Some people say buy a flexible rod. But I know that Michael Pearl prefers a quarter-inch plastic plumbing line as his weapon du jour. He's also talked about going and getting a willow switch, which I got to tell you, I remember that from being with my grandparents at all the time. It was no fun. If they sent you out there to go pick and peel your willow switch that you're about to get a whooping with, no fun at all. You know, a lot of people my age, and I'm old as dirt, they don't like change. They don't like new things. And sometimes I can get like that myself. Recently, my friend and I were looking at clothes online, talking together while we were looking, and we couldn't figure out why everything has a hood on it now. I know hoodies are a thing, but I really don't need a tank top with a hoodie on it, with a hood on it. So we don't like change a lot of times with the older people. But I can tell you one thing, this kind of change to better stuff, to make life better, to not cause so much trauma in our children is the most important change. And we have to push ourselves sometimes, stretch to be able to embrace these new truths, because that's one thing that I have to say about non-denominational Christianity. It has gone so far off the rails in the last 5, 10 years that I don't recognize it anymore. I don't know what has happened to the church. And I don't know what it's going to take to pull everybody back to the simple love of Christ, because that's really what it's all about. It's not really about punishing other people. It's definitely not about doing like this. I'm so much better than everybody else. It's not about that at all. And if I could get people to see how simple it actually is, and it does not involve abusing other people in any way, shape, or form, I'd be a happy camper. But unfortunately, I'm not a fairy that can wave a magic wand and accomplish that. All I can do is go out and shout this crap and hope that someone hears, and they understand. Okay, you guys, I'm going to go. I love you guys. Thank you for watching. I'm sorry I'm not doing a live. Like I said, between my cold and the flickering electricity today, I don't think it's a good thing. I'm not exactly in right mind today. Still coughing, hacking, and various things. So I'm going to go drink another hot toddy and go lay down. And I pray you have the rest of your day is peaceful and awesome.